Imagine being 15 and forced to work in a brothel from 2 p.m. to 2 a.m. Then I'll take you to another one until 5 in the morning every single day, and you're a 15-year-old girl. Imagine that if you can.
Human trafficking, when it really comes down to it, is simply the holding of another person in a condition of compelled service. In other words, it's modern-day slavery.
I grew up in Cameroon. I was 14 years old when I came to the state. I was told that I was going to go to school when I came here, but unfortunately when I get here, it didn't happen the way. I was taking care of kids, cooking, doing laundry. I have to make sure that I'm doing something so I won't get yelled or hit.
We see it all across the country. People are promised better lives. They're told that they'll come here to the land of opportunity. You can make your money, you can feed your family. And when they get here, they're placed into a role that they can't get out of.
First thing, he raped me. And that's when he told me that he had bought me for $200, that I was his slave. And I was not going nowhere.
They don't know where they are, and they have no clue as to how to communicate or how to move forward, or if they were to escape, where to go.
The overwhelming image you get is of just being worked to the bone. Once the trafficker has this victim dominated, they exploit and exploit and exploit the victims.
It could be beatings, it could be psychological manipulation, it could be taking their documents. Force, fraud, and coercion are really, it's a psychological web that the trafficker kind of weaves around their victims to overbear their will, to make them think that they have no reasonable alternative but to continue in service.
A lot of people probably wonder, why don't you escape? Why don't you this? Why don't you run?
That would be like taking you or me and putting us over in Moscow, and we don't speak the language, we don't know the geography, and then somebody says, oh, no, this is what you're going to be doing instead of what you thought you were going to be doing. And I know where your family is, and they'll beat you, rape you, and what choice do you feel that you have? How are you going to escape? Do you know how to contact the police over there?
My trafficker said, if you go to the police, no one can believe you. First, you have no documents. Second, you don't speak English and you don't have money. And I'm sorry to say, in my country, only people who have money have justice.
In many different countries, law enforcement and governments are corrupt. And the people from those countries don't expect anything better over here.
She was telling me that if the police catch you on the road, they're going to lock you up and then have you sent back home. I can't do anything because I don't have nobody here. I'm here alone.
She said, in this country, dogs have more rights than you have. And I believe everything she said.
Traffickers are starting to use means that are much more violent. The threats are greater. Their use of weapons has increased.
The coercion they use. I will kill your family. I will kill your children, your mother. Who cannot be afraid?
In that case, you don't even need an actual weapon. You've got this weapon of fear over people that can be just as or more effective.
The data on human trafficking is extremely high. Hundreds of thousands of people being trafficked internationally every year, tens of thousands within the United States of America. I'm positive that that number will continue to increase because we have just begun to evaluate the severity of this problem.
It's happening in the big cities, it's happening in medium-sized towns, and it actually, based on my experience, is happening in rural America.
The traffickers are very manipulative. They'll lie to them, promise them good jobs, but once they get over here, they find themselves being forced into a prostitution. It's modern-day slavery, what's going on.
Transporting or any kind of transportation does not have to be involved. So a person can be trafficked and still not be moved anywhere.
You see a lot of cases with women in prostitution, with migrant workers.
Restaurants, construction, labor situations, maids, nannies, companions. It can be in the bars, massage parlors.
It's in the coffee you drink, it's in the clothes that you wear, it's in the tomatoes on your hamburgers.
Human traffickers are making millions upon millions upon millions of dollars every single year. And it's occurring right under our noses. We just don't know what to look for.
Trafficking and smuggling are often confused or used interchangeably, when in fact they're very different.
Smuggling tends to be a little bit more humane. It's that agreed upon price, getting them from point A to point B, having the payment made, and then releasing them safely to a family member or a respondent. That is smuggling. That happens every day.
If you've got long-term payment of a debt and the person isn't allowed to leave, even though that might have been a smuggling situation, it could have turned into a trafficking situation.
They're told, well, you keep working, you'll be able to pay off your debt. Unfortunately, their debt keeps continuing. It's a never-ending cycle for them.
The issue of choice is critical here. Can you make a choice to be a slave? You cannot make a choice to be a slave.
Go in there with no preconceived ideas on how this population should be.
Not all victims are undocumented. Not all victims are immigrants.
We've got a lot of U.S. citizens who are vulnerable.
My primary experience is based on a case that involved several individuals who were mentally ill in a group home in rural Kansas. They ranged in age from approximately 30 to about 80 years old. They were all Caucasian. They had to give their clothing to their trafficker and perform labor such as tearing down an old barn or repairing barbed wire fences. And so you can't look at a certain profile. Unfortunately, they can be anyone who has a particular vulnerability that can be exploited by the trafficker.
It's looking at that individual person. What situation are they in? Are they being forced to do something that against their will through fraud, force, or coercion?
He had threatened me that if I tell anyone what's going on, that he will kill my family. My family is very important. That's all what I have, my family.
This isn't a crime that involves breaking the sovereignty of the United States by bringing an illegal alien across the border. We have other laws for that. This crime is about the constitutional right to freedom. It's a human rights issue. The following are key points from this segment. The modern definition of human trafficking is the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain or maintain someone in service, whether for labor or commercial sexual activity, or the use of a minor for commercial sexual activity, regardless of whether there's any overt coercion. There are significant differences between the crimes of human trafficking and smuggling. Trafficking is not voluntary. It entails the exploitation of a person for labor or services and does not necessarily involve movement of a person. It can occur with U.S. citizens, domestically or abroad. Smuggling, however, is voluntary and ends after the border crossing. Fees are usually paid in advance or upon arrival, and it is always international in nature. Anyone can be a victim of trafficking, including U.S. citizens as well as documented or undocumented immigrants. Victims can be women, children, or men.
State and local law enforcement, they're the eyes and ears on the ground. They know where the brothels are, they know where the factories are, they know the houses where there's a lot of 911 calls, and they're in a position to see some of the first red warning flags.
The police came to the house a few times to ask me if I was okay, and I said yeah. And the man was next to the door, close to me. The police just left. times that they came, that's what they did. They just looked and left.
They have to understand what it is in order to be able to see it. And then what they need to do is they need to look at what we call indicators of possible trafficking cases.
We always look down, we never look at the people in their face. We're afraid of other people to know our situation. We avoid questions.
If you never see them outside, but you know they're there, that's an indicator that you might have something. Another indicator is controlled communication to their home country. Controlled movement. They never separate, they always stay together. Look at the security. If the barbed wire is pointing in, that means it's meant to keep people in, not to let them out.
If there's a gut feeling that somebody's controlling this person or scripting their answers, it's worth following up on. Some of our biggest success stories have involved police officers on the front lines saying something's wrong with this picture.
How old are you, Carla?
18.
What's your date of birth?
January.
International organized crime, of course, that's what people expect to find in this, and they are involved in this. But the bulk of what we're seeing is loosely based family organizations. Often you'll have a recruiter or 2 or 3 recruiters in the home country from that family who are pitching this dream of a better life to the victims. Other people will facilitate their illegal entry, and then you'll get the people who are making the money off of them by abusing them, forcing them into prostitution, holding them against their will.
We had a security guard who was watching us 24 hours a day. I had to work 17 hours a day, and I had 10 minutes to eat meal, beans and rice. Then I had to live inside.
One day I was cleaning, and she started yelling at me and pulled the Windex away from me and sprayed it on my face. And so anything she had on her hand, she would use it at me. I was just hoping that one day it would stop.
We cannot treat these people as criminals due to their immigration status. We have to treat them as victims.
The Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000 has 3 main goals: prevention, protection, and prosecution.
With an adult, you have to show force, fraud, or coercion.
For minors in commercial sexual activity, we no longer need to prove force, fraud, or coercion.
Any child under the age of 18 that has been involved in a commercial sex act is found to be a victim of severe form of trafficking automatically.
We're starting to see a lot of states enact anti-trafficking legislation. You need to make sure that you know the laws in your area. Trafficking involves a whole host of crimes: kidnappings, murders, rapes, assaults, money laundering, immigration violations. Any of these can be used against the traffickers.
My partner and I got a call of an assault situation at a restaurant. We soon discovered that there was 10 to a dozen Chinese immigrants that were being forced to work at this restaurant. That's when we called in INS. Once INS was on board, it just opened up the case, tenfold. We started discovering all these apartments where they were housing people, and we were able to figure out who our suspect was.
Our main goal is to attack these organizations. We can't effectively attack these organizations with just, a handful of authorities, but we can get them with the combined authorities.
Keisha Handy, the Victim Witness Coordinator for the United States Attorney's Office.
Edwin Chaposo, Harris County Sheriff's Office.
Suzanne Bradley, FBI.
There's a role for every federal agency, every local law enforcement agency to play, and the success stories are the ones where all the different agencies have worked together.
There's a whole host of social service needs that law enforcement cannot provide.
Can I help you?
Yes, I need to see Kay Buck.
Okay, she's expecting you. She's in her office right down the hall.
Our non-governmental organizations, our community-based organizations can help.
It's really important for law enforcement agencies and officers to know that by getting non-governmental organizations involved right from the very beginning, that will help their case.
Thanks for coming in.
Absolutely.
Good to see you.
Part of our culture is, hey, stand to the side, ma'am. We can handle this. We can go it alone. We know that we will not be effective if we have that kind of attitude. We're going to have to learn to bring in community partners that are really experts in this work.
Victims almost always come to us with nothing but their clothes on their back. They need food and shelter. They need a lot of medical attention. We're not here to disrupt the investigation. We really want the same thing, and that is to put the trafficker behind bars and to help this victim lead a normal life again.
There has to be a mutual respect for this local mission and the state mission, the federal mission, at every level. That's why we have a Harris County Sheriff's Deputy assigned to the FBI right now, working in FBI space.
Hey Ed, when you got a chance, you can come over here.
What you got?
When an officer at roll call gets a sheet of paper saying, hey, if you come upon a scene and you think there may be a human trafficking issue, here's your contact.
If the U.S. Attorney's Office is asking, I think we may get a quicker response.
Local law enforcement are the eyes and ears that are on the ground. They protect and serve, and they run into much more people than we do on a daily basis. So they also, in turn, receive much more information.
Go out now into your community. Find out who can house people. Find out who can feed people. Find out who can interpret for you. Set up everything in advance, because you may not have a case right now, but you're going to.
Who do you need to call at FBI agency? Who do you need to call at the ICE agency? Who do you need to call the Department of Justice, your assistant U.S. attorney? Have those phone numbers at hand.
Police officers can't do this work alone. We're going to have to learn how to trust, how to be open, how to share. We really need to come together so we can expose this dark secret that's occurring throughout the nation.
The following are key points from this segment. In order to identify this crime, know the federal law as well as state anti-trafficking laws. There are many potential indicators of human trafficking, including but not limited to buildings with high security, massage parlors or escort services, especially those advertising exotic women, situations in which people's movement or communication is controlled, or the presence of a debt to the employer. That's a major red flag. Additional red flags include situations in which documents are held by someone else, women in prostitution who do not speak English, or individuals who are hidden or rarely seen, but you know that they're there. Victims may avoid eye contact and appear withdrawn. There's often a heightened fear of police. There may be one person trying to speak for the entire group when you first discover them. Traffickers can operate in loosely based family organizations or as a single individual working independently. International and U.S. organized crime may be involved. Larger operations include recruiters who lure with false promises, brokers working as middlemen who sell and transport victims, and end traffickers who hold, move, trade, and sell their victims. Successful cases include collaboration between state and local law enforcement, victims and their advocates, non-governmental organizations or nonprofit social service agencies, as well as prosecutors. No matter whether you're in a jurisdiction with 30,000 police officers on the force or in a jurisdiction with 3 police officers on the force, you could stumble across a human trafficking case.
It's very easy to see a picture, even a photograph, and you immediately think you know what's happening in that scenario. But when you start to ask, why are you here? When do you go home? Do you have a debt? All of a sudden, the picture pans out in panoramic view.
We were dispatched to a disturbance. When we arrived, it was a little bit chaotic. It took quite a bit of time on scene of the initial call to actually figure out what was going on.
You may not realize what you have. You may not completely understand what you have, but document it and start looking for help.
Their captors had come and was threatening if they didn't pay $5,000 per person that they would kill the family and burn down the house.
Every patrolman should have a camera. Take pictures of people, take pictures of scenes, take pictures of vehicles. Be as detailed as possible with your pen and with your camera.
I don't even think I did anything that big. I just did a report. I just did my job.
I'd urge everybody to call their federal partners very early in the process, whether it's an FBI agent or an ICE agent that you have a relationship, or whether you call us at the Civil Rights Division for assistance. We can actually be a force multiplier for what you're finding on the ground.
I was seeking help. I was wanting help, but I didn't think anyone can help me.
Our primary concern is officer safety and the safety of others. If it means going in fast and hard in order to make sure that everybody is safe, we will do that. You know, if we can attack it from a different way that isn't as traumatic, we would definitely explore those avenues.
We've had cases where victims have actually smuggled notes out saying, please have someone come and help me. And then if the police show up too aggressively, they'll withdraw and never tell their story.
Do what you need to do. Remove them from that situation. Get to an area where you can come down on a one-on-one level with them. You can't get on a personal level with somebody in full battle gear.
Each of those individuals must be approached as a possible potential trafficking victim. Every one of them.
We've had officers take videotapes of the brothels they've raided. The psychological and physical trauma on these young women and girls is tremendous.
We want victims to feel that they can come to us and that they won't be violated twice.
This is a crime like no other. This is a crime that your evidence is a human being. So by taking care of the victim needs, you're really taking care of your investigation.
When victims of trafficking are found and rescued, all of their needs need to be addressed almost simultaneously. It's almost like a cascade. Housing, mental health issues, health care.
Until we can really come in and listen sensitively and address her issues, her immediate concerns for her own health and safety, she's not going to be in a position to confide.
Cooperating with law enforcement, they said we will take care of your safety. Everything they promised to me was true. I felt comfortable. I believe in them. I trust them.
That is why we rely so heavily on the NGOs to come in as quickly as possible and try to meet her immediate concerns.
What we do to help law enforcement is to create a stable environment for victims, to help them get to a place mentally and emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, where they are a good witness.
At the end of the day, these are people who have to be approached with respect, with dignity, and really try to get to the bottom of what it was that happened to them. The number one rule about interviewing a trafficking victim is to put them at ease.
Don't get up too close or touch them. Try to get them to relax and make them feel that they're safe, you're not going to hurt them.
Some of the questions we'd ask were, what did you do in the country you were from?
Are you getting paid? Are you able to keep your pay?
Do you have control over your identification?
Do you have control over your own housing? Are you free to leave? If it's an argument over a debt, ask what the debt is about. What was it for?
Leave the immigration questions until you've built up a rapport already with them. If you ask them straight away, you're not going to get any good information.
Many times they think that because they're not citizens, they're not entitled to the full protection of the United States' laws. We need to tell them that if you're on the soil of the United States of America, you're fully protected by our laws and our Constitution.
You may say something like, I'm a police officer, I'm here to protect any individual in the community. So we're going to look into what happened to you, and we're going to try to find you help.
Even those that open up, they won't tell you everything. They'll give you a little bit. And then maybe in a second interview or a third interview, a little bit more.
Be sure you're asking it in a situation where the person's able to talk freely and there's not people around. Use an interpreter who's not someone who's right there on the work site or the housing place that you went to.
Please, 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 for the officers, don't allow the employer be a translator for this person.
There was a significant reluctance on their part to even tell us what happened and why it happened. It wasn't until the translators arrived till they told us, well, they live together in this apartment, and there's a whole bunch of people that live at this apartment, and we were asking, why is that so? And then they were the ones who kind of uncovered it for us that, well, they were brought over here to work for this person in this restaurant to pay off a fee. It just broke it wide open.
The key to a successful approach is finding the right personality that can establish the rapport with the potential victim. If you do not succeed, allow the NGOs and social service organizations to have an attempt to interview before you take any attempts to deport.
If you care about the victims, it will show. If you're just doing the job, it's going to show too.
These cases take a lot of man-hours. It takes a lot of sweat and tears. The end result is worth the sweat.
I don't know who was the person who tipped the police, but with all my heart, I thank to the person who did it.
The following are key points from this segment. Human trafficking may come to your attention when investigating crimes such as racketeering, extortion, kidnapping, zoning violations, money laundering, domestic violence, sexual assault, or homicide. When interviewing those involved in a potential trafficking situation, use a professional, independent interpreter. Try to put the victim at ease and allow the victim to tell her story. Leave immigration questions until you've built a rapport. And be prepared to conduct victim interviews over multiple sessions. It will take time to get the complete story. For more information, please refer to IACP's guidebook, The Crime of Human Trafficking, a law enforcement guide to identification and investigation. Or contact the IACP at 1-800-THE-IACP or on the web at www.theiacp.org.